I'm so happy to be here. Good morning, everyone. Let's go straight away into the panel. The phrase actually that South, the growth engine of India, is really powerful, but also very deceptively simple. When we describe the southern states as India's growth engine, we're not talking just of GDP or industrial output. We are talking about a distinct development trajectory that has been shaped by early investments in health and education, strong public institutions, and social reform movements, and long traditions of state-led planning. At the time of independence, the southern states were not doing as well. Right? They were at the middle or the bottom of the rung, and this changed in the 1980s. But really what makes the southern story unique is not only that these states have grown, but how they have grown. They've grown through human development, administrative capacity, social infrastructure. All of this has ensured economic resilience across generations. But then this growth comes with questions. Right? Can these models sustain growth in an era of fiscal stress? There's demographic transition. We know about the realignment that's about to happen. And there's global economic uncertainty that's affecting all of us. So, do successful states face a success penalty, especially in public finance and federal policy? And is there space for greater coordination among southern states, or does each state need to chart its own path forward? So today's conversation is not really only about celebrating, but it's also about understanding what growth in the South has really been built on, what structural gaps now demand attention, and how southern states can navigate this complex economic and political landscape. And we, of course, have very privileged to have these three distinguished panelists who've been working on this for a very, very long time. So let me start by asking the panel a very basic question. When we say the South is India's growth engine, what do we actually mean? Growth in output, in human capability, or in institutional capacity? And where do you think this engine is under strain? We'd like to hear from each one of you for a few minutes, and then we'll take it from there.
We have been discussing development models. Frequently, we hear the names of Gujarat, southern states, of course, Tamil Nadu, Kerala, and Karnataka, all the southern states together. The difference, even Maharashtra is number one in terms of size and growth, Maharashtra also. The difference is, see, in the case of Maharashtra and Gujarat, they have developed economically, whereas the South has developed socially and economically. That is the difference. That's why Amartya Sen, in his Uncertain Glory, quoting our states with the UPs and other things. So there is a sequence. In this development, there is a sequence. First, the South has achieved social development. So up to 90s, maybe in the case of Tamil Nadu, I can say confidently, we have not accelerated our economic growth. By 90, we have more number of poor. All the challenges were there. But up to 90, for the 40 years, and even before that, from independence onwards, from 1920s onwards, the politics of this state started fighting for the social justice issues, reservation, right to education, participation in education, higher education institutions, employment. So the politics fought for share in employment, education, political representation. So that's how it started, the development journey started. Post-independence, most of the social sectors are assigned to the state list. The state governments are given most of these social sectors, whereas the union government is given some macro level growth, stability, inflation, all those concerns have been given to them. So having given, the states could not spend as they like. See, for instance, in the case of Tamil Nadu, Kamarajar, one of the earlier Congress chief minister, he wanted to spend for school education, midday meals, but the policies again, though these subjects were assigned to the states, the policies were dictated by the union government. So it was the planning, beginning of the planning era. So the planning, the plan strategy is conceived based on one growth model called Herod-Domer growth model, where investment is the major driver of. They preferred. See, in the Constituent Assembly, there were debates whether to social justice between OBC reservation and SC/ST were agreed, but reservation has not been given to minorities and OBCs. During that debate, the debate was whether to go for social justice or economic justice. The union preferred to go for economic justice. Through that, they thought that they can address social issues, whereas the South, Tamil Nadu and other states preferred the other way. We thought that addressing social issues, education, health, and these are the primary concerns. That's how we conceived development. So in Tamil Nadu, as I said, though Kamarajar wanted to spend, he could not do that because neither the union policies nor the state administrators within the state have not given, allowed him to spend as he likes, because capital expenditure alone is considered as the public sector expenditure or government expenditure. Revenue expenditure on health, education, and other social sector were considered to be unproductive or useless expenditure. So he has not been given a free hand. The cabinet secretary in the state assembly refused his spending approval for his spending proposals. So he went and requested the landlords, private corporates, and everyone throughout the state asking money. So that is where the development model shifted when DMK took power. Karunanidhi, Annadurai did not have much of the time, whereas Karunanidhi had the opportunity. Even the mid-60s, the election promise was 3 or 4 kilograms of rice per rupee. That was the promise made by DMK. And DMK ascertained its power. Though the executives were the same, they wanted to implement the union government policy where capital expenditure alone is productive. The state government ascertained its position. We should spend for, we have been democratically elected government, we should spend for people's aspirations. So that is where the state government started spending for health, education, PDS. So the revenue expenditure, after the first regime of DMK regime, the revenue expenditure from somewhere around 22 or 28 to jump to 40%. So that became a new benchmark. So from then onwards, because of the competitive politics, the other governments also have to continue with that or expanded many of the programs. And this social sector expenditures and development formed a basis. So it helped people to see what is the point in providing reservation when there are no qualified candidates available to fill up the vacancies. So along with the reservation, the state conceived, the social justice policies of the state conceived was spending for health, education, even if it is a capital expenditure, it is spent for rural road, electricity, infrastructure, like that slum clearance, providing slums to the poor. So like that the capital expenditure has been spent. So at one point, almost half of the revenue expenditure the state is spending on social sector. So that formed a base when 90s when we liberalized the economy, the private investment started pouring in. So it is not the public investment, the private investment started coming in. So the development which we are witnessing now, Tamil Nadu is a double-digit growth, and almost as the inaugural speaker said, around one third of the GDP is being contributed by southern states with 20% of the population. So the rest of the 80% of the population is contributing just to 2/3 of the GDP. And the problem is the challenges are on the social front. Still they have not been able to develop the social sector, and social development is still a challenge. So this is the model. Now development is not linear. Once if social sector basis investment started coming in, so growth took place. When you have growth, the madam moderator asked the question whether we can sustain given the fiscal stress. yes, we can sustain because we have expanded our economic base, the growth rate is accelerating, and so it is something like a vicious cycle. The expanded economy and growth rate helps for more revenue, and that we can spend it for the public sector. See, 5 guarantees, Tamil Nadu is spending substantially on social sector. So all this is feasible, and we can see they are encouraging each other. Social development encourage economic development, and economic development encourage gives scope for spending more on social sector development. So this is the model. So in your profile, you said what is working. So this is what working. What is not working, maybe I will add later.
Okay. When you talk about growth generally of India, I see two phases. Maybe there is a third phase that is developing today. But there have been two distinct phases. One was in the early stage when we believed intensely in the socialist model of development, all the points with which my colleague here mentioned. That is, we focus on certain methods of development. We focus on public sector. We focus on human development, of course, because some of the great things that happened was in the 50s, when you had the institutes of management, you had the Atomic Energy Commission, you had the Vikram Sarabhai Space Center, and the Indian Space Research Organization, all those things, Indian Institute of Science, all that was there at that point of time. Now, as Mr. Jyotirlingam mentioned, there was a focus towards control at that point of time. The method of growth was controlled. I remember there used to be a horrible organization called the DGTD, the Directorate General of Trade and Development. I'm sure you must have remembered that. What it used to do, if an industrialist wants to start a unit, say in Tamil Nadu, or in Gujarat, or in Maharashtra, or in UP, they will say, no, you have to start it in Kerala, because Kerala is regionally underdeveloped. Now, the industrialists would want to start a particular capacity. They will say, no, you don't have enough demand, enough market for that, so you have to reduce your capacity. So this kind of control was exercised during that period of time. And the whole thing changed. That is what I said in 1991, when we decided to liberalize. At that point of time, now, I had been working in Kerala, so I have the left mentality very strongly in my head. So when this 1991 thing happened, I told my minister, I was then Industry Secretary of Kerala, I told my minister, I was a Muslim League man, Kunyali Kutti, I told him they have done this, but I don't know what is going to happen in the future. Later, when in 2011, when I went back to Kerala as the Vice Chairman of the State Planning Board, then he told me at that time you had said this. But the whole situation had changed by then, after 1991. When industry was given a more free hand, there was a great deal of development that took place in different places. Now, the South has been definitely a gainer from this 1991 revolution that took place. We contribute about 30% of the national GDP. But at the same time, we share only 16% of the total allocable resources of the government of India, which is a complaint that all the southern states have today, that we are not getting a fair deal. Karnataka in particular has been very strident. They've been saying for every rupee that we contribute as taxes to the central coffers, we get only 15 paise. Now that's a situation for all of Kerala, all of South India. Probably the highest is Kerala with 57 paise. But all of them are getting below what they're contributing to the state exchequer. Of course, we understand there are various other parameters working. The center, it's part of our constitution that we are spending more money on the less developed areas. And the finance commissions have also been doing that. But increasingly, there is a feeling that we are not getting the share that we wanted, that we are not politically powerful enough to get what we want. And this is an important factor that is governing the approach of the South. All the southern states together do believe this is happening. Of course, the South is very varied. Karnataka, as was mentioned, you have a very strong services industry. Now manufacturing is also coming, as the minister said in his inaugural speech. Tamil Nadu has been a balanced industrial growth, both industry and it's doing very well in the social development areas also. Kerala has been, on the other hand, it's been developing in the services sector, particularly tourism and so on, but still it depends to a great extent on the migration of people from Kerala to the Middle East, to USA, to Germany, and the money they send. So it is essentially a consumption-led growth that you see in Kerala. Andhra is more agriculture-oriented. It is, the fisheries have started, and that too last 10, 15 years. They've been doing very well in inland fisheries. And Telangana, after the bifurcation of the state between Andhra and Telangana has been growing at the fastest, growth rate has been the fastest, primarily because of Hyderabad and so on. So essentially there are differences between the southern states, but all of them need to look at what is happening today all over the country. I was having a little word on the side with the minister, and what is happening, what is going to happen. Today you have things like, as was mentioned, it's been openly said, people are speaking openly of double engine governments, which should never be said in a constitutional system, because all states are to be treated equally. Then all the states in the southern sector are showing stress in public finance, and particularly Kerala. Others also, Karnataka and Tamil Nadu, are a little better off. Telangana, Andhra Pradesh is showing stress. It's not getting enough money, and now borrowing has also been curtailed. And tomorrow you are going to have another problem that is going to arise. Political power is going to be restricted if you have delimitation of parliamentary constituencies. Kerala, if the same 543 seats, the strength is maintained, Kerala will lose 8 seats, Tamil Nadu will lose 8 seats, while Uttar Pradesh will gain 11 seats, Bihar will gain 10 seats. So what is really going to happen is that the political authority, the share of political power that the South has will be diluted to a considerable extent. The South has also developed in a different manner. There is a much higher degree of urbanization. Tamil Nadu's the urban-rural share, the urban share is 48%. Kerala is also around 48%. And urbanization has its own problems of development. So that is another issue. UP, on the other hand, is only 22%. Bihar is only 11%. So this is another problem that we are facing. So we, as a separate bloc, we have our differences, We have our different methods of growth. We do attach, generally all the states, do attach a great deal of importance to health, to education, and so on. And many of the states have grown in different ways. But at the same time, we are getting stressed in many ways. We seem to be losing a bit of clout in the overall scheme of things. And this is something which I think all the southern states need to think about. Federalism as such is a very important concept under the Indian Constitution. There used to be federalism expressed through the National Development Council, through the Interstate Council. The Niti Aayog was actually set up to bring all the states together. In fact, the first meeting which I attended as Vice Chairman of the State Planning Board, there was a big kind of a plaque behind the Prime Minister saying Team India. Now the whole idea was that we should bring the states together. That was his thought at that point of time. But increasingly, splits are developing, which is not good for the country and which could adversely affect South India at a later stage. The finance commissions are there. They are supposed to do certain things, but they are covered by certain parameters, certain terms of reference, which do not really provide for equity. That is what the South at least believes. We have many other problems, like there's high pollution in the north, while here we have water scarcity. Bangalore has a lot of water scarcity. So these problems are different. Our ways of thinking are different. Our ways of development are different. How we are going to, I think there will be differences between the states. There will be competition between the states, yes. But at the same time, I think the South must seriously think in terms of how we can unite, how we can combine together and talk of our issues. Talk of our issues, not necessarily in a political way, but we have a lot of think tanks, we have a lot of intelligent academic people, we have bureaucrats like me and Uma, who all have things to contribute. So why can we not talk together? Why can we not provide a kind of a common forum which will help all the states collectively? We need not take up the issues which divide the states, but take the issues where we are together and where we can gain from each other, and where we can collectively assert our position in the national scheme of things. So these are the ideas I had. I hope I have answered some of your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Shivananam and Mr. Chandrasekhar, for laying out a very panoramic view of where the South is and what have been some of the reasons for the South's success. We'll come to some of the gaps later, as they mentioned. I'd like to zoom in a little bit now on your question was, what do we conceive of as growth? And looking at all the young people in this room, I'd like to zoom in on this room itself. I think one of the manifestations of what the South has been able to achieve is a room like this, where mostly everybody is young, and roughly half of the people in the room are women, roughly equal numbers. This is a big success. This is a success that you'll see in the South. It's also the very fact that we're having such a dialogue, an open dialogue, where we're talking about successes, but we're also mentioning that we will go on to talk about gaps and talk about some of the failures. I think open dialogue is also, creating an environment for open dialogue is an important part of what makes the South what it is. Looking at the young faces, I was reminded of when I joined the service, 34 years ago. At that time, when I joined, I have to tell you, when I was a trainee, young trainee IS officer, when I'd go on the road in my vehicle, I'd actually be disheartened to see that there were young girls who were washing vessels on the side of the road, looking after siblings, all of this. Young girls not being in school was a common phenomenon, especially in northern districts. Over the 3 decades of my service, even now when I travel on road trips, when I went to Belgaum last this thing, it's exhilarating for me to see girls lining up with backpacks at bus stops, going to school, going to college, and I take pictures of this because I have seen that this is something that has happened over 30 years, and it has happened as a result of concerted action. State action, but also civil society. Also the pressure of community. The efforts played by local governments. All of these, I think, are a part of the recipe of what has led to transformation. Human capital, human flourishing, what vision has been laid out by people like Amartya Sen. This has to be the foundation of growth. Human flourishing, supported by a bedrock of health, of education, of skills that people want, not skills that we just want to force down their throat, of helping women and young girls get into spaces where they can learn and where their voices are also heard, of creating, for example, working women's hostels right next to workplaces, transitioning them from homes, from environments of perhaps regressive or negative social norms, into places where they can see other ways of living and other ways of being, and where they can feel empowered. These are some of the successes. Labor force participation of women, creating creches. These are some of the examples that I'd like to just quickly mention, because as Development Commissioner, my day-to-day work is about really reviewing concrete actions taken by the state. These are not competitions. The southern states were roughly similarly placed to the rest of India when we started out. How did we diverge? Some of the answers have already been discussed. Look at the divergence, for example. I'm not going to read out the numbers, but the parameters and the indicators. Infant mortality rate, maternal mortality rate. We actually get concerned. A few years ago, Karnataka had a 3-digit maternal mortality rate. A meeting was held at the level of the Chief Minister, and it was discussed that we need to take action. Steps were defined. Groups were formed. Working group was formed. Schemes were formulated, and over the years we've been able to make great progress in something as fundamental as the maternal mortality rate. Nutrition, not only in terms of creating Anganwadis and having nearly 70,000 Anganwadis in a state like Karnataka, but adding to the nutrition that is provided as part of the centrally sponsored scheme. And I'll come to this. Centrally sponsored schemes are important ways to give fundamental basic coverage in social services. But the plus that states are doing, the plus that, for example, Tamil Nadu did when they launched the midday meal scheme, when they scaled it up and taught a lesson to the rest of India, that Karnataka did when we launched eggs in Anganwadis. Now we have eggs in schools, we have milk in schools, nearly 1 crore children getting milk every day, nearly 1 crore children in Anganwadis and schools getting eggs every day. And this is happening not only because of state action, but because of important civil society partners like the Azim Premji Foundation. 2 eggs a week are given by government, and 4 eggs a week are given by the Azim Premji Foundation. So a part of the story is that we have strong, not just state action, but strong civil society partnerships, strong civil society participation, which keeps the state accountable and responsive. I could go on. Under 5 mortality. The provision of 70,000 Anganwadis, out of which nearly 4,000 Anganwadis are funded only by the state, in addition to the Anganwadis that are part of the centrally sponsored scheme. School enrollments. I talked about how getting children into school. Now we're talking about retaining children in school. We have, in September last year in Karnataka, launched a universal higher education scholarship program for girls, called Deepika, which in partnership with the Azim Premji Foundation allows every girl in Karnataka who has attended government school for class 12 and class 10 to apply for the scholarship. It's a universal scholarship, no matter where she chooses to attend higher education, where in India, whether in private institution or public institution, as long as she has studied in Karnataka in a 10th and 12th government school, she is eligible for a 30,000 rupees a year scholarship. Applications are online. It's universal. Now think of, we had nearly 1.8 lakh girls applying for the scholarship. Now think of the impact such a scheme will have, or such a policy intervention will have, on just allowing girls to dream of going to college, on allowing girls to think that they need not go for the option of teenage marriage, teenage pregnancy, remaining at home, not being able to be productive members of the workforce, not being empowered. This is something that Karnataka launched just last year in September. School enrollment, retention, hostels. Again, hostels, we have more than 6,000 hostels for the young people, for children, starting as early as class 1, for children of families from marginalized communities, SC, ST, OBC, minority welfare, hostels which allow young people to attend school, get their meals, and stay in a safe and stable environment until class 10 or class 12. We have not only a focus on college enrollments, but also on scholarships, and a focus on making such hostels available for children with disabilities, for children living with HIV. Just yesterday I was reviewing scholarship programs for young people living with HIV. So some of the successes that states like Karnataka, Tamil Nadu, Kerala have achieved, the reasons for these are hidden in these schemes. The fact that we want to go to scale, but we also want to focus on those who might otherwise be left out. For example, children with disabilities. For example, children living with HIV. Scholarships, we have a sponsorship program for children who are not only infected, but also those who are affected. That is, whose parents might have, or family members might have HIV. These sponsorship program, this again is a plus. It's a state scheme which enables these children to remain within family care and not be institutionalized, because we don't want. And this is just 10,000 or 12,000 children. So you can see, we're talking about 1 crore children who are in Anganwadis, who are in creches, who are in schools, but we're also talking about a number as small as 12,000, because we don't want anyone to be left out. And I think that's a part of what makes a state responsive to needs. And by state, I don't mean only government, I mean government with civil society and with private sector participation, with intellectual inputs from strong organizations working across the South, understanding what are some of the successes. A culture of transparency. Karnataka was one of the earliest states in India to come up with its own human development report. I was a very young member of that working group, and we used to meet during the lunch break. We used to meet during the lunch break when Renuka Vishwanathan was the planning secretary, and we wrote that entire report from within the government. It was an honest report. It was a transparent report, and it's worth reading in full. But not just Karnataka. Kerala's focus on planning, Tamil Nadu's focus on planning, and putting out reports in the public domain, getting them read, disseminating. These are also ways in which we raise the level of discourse so that there's public understanding about what makes our states succeed. But apart from only data, the need to study schemes such as the extraordinarily successful Muthulakshmi Reddy scheme for women, pregnant women in Tamil Nadu, which has led to tremendous success and reduction in maternal mortality and infant mortality. Tamil Nadu's working women hostels, Kerala's Big Bang decentralization, which has been a model for the entire country, but also decentralization in Tamil Nadu, in Karnataka, which has led to better service delivery. We all recognize and we know that decentralization is pivotal to better service delivery at the grassroots. In fact, decentralization and gram panchayats is what allows us to invert this whole metaphor of last mile, where we focus on every Indian at the last mile, and we say we want to focus on you at the first mile. We have more than 80 services which in the last 3 years have been rolled out in gram panchayats, so that people don't have to go all the way to the taluk and roam around at the taluk taking a bus, paying money, losing a day's wages in order to just get one certificate or one particular document. They can apply at the Gram Panchayat, they can apply online. Online, again, the use of technology. Technology in a state like Karnataka, Tamil Nadu, Kerala, Telangana, in southern states, is not only used for transparency. It is also, it's not used only for basic, very first level things like first in, first out. These are all 20th century achievements. Technology today is also used to reach out to those who are excluded by technology. That is one of the challenges that we pose to some of our digital fellows who are working on reaching those who are excluded, those who don't have a smartphone. What is the way in which we can give digital literacy and enable them to reach online platforms in order to apply and claim services? This is one of the things. Working women's hostels, again, learning from each other. Karnataka learned a lot from Kerala's decentralization, and we have been able to take decentralization and local governance further along those ways. Karnataka has learned. Women's collectives, the self-help groups, the Kudumbashri of Kerala. Karnataka was also one of the early states which, as far back as 2001, started the Stree Shakti group. I could go on, but one example, a very vivid example, when all of this came together, is during the COVID pandemic. Rural Karnataka, it was the panchayats which stepped up, the Gram Panchayat task forces, the Ashas, the Anganwadi workers, the house-to-house survey of more than 1 crore families to understand vulnerabilities and COVID comorbidities. This was possible because of strong civil society, private sector, participation, local government, more than 1 lakh local government elected representatives, of which 50% are women, working with us. I started my service in Karnataka when the total literacy campaign was being rolled out. Again, that was during my district training. I used to go in Mysore to total literacy sessions in villages, understanding how volunteerism was teaching each one teach one. That was one of the things. And 7 years later, when as director of mass and non-formal education, I rolled out a second campaign of volunteerism. I remember visiting one of the Gram Panchayats in Kolar and looking at people learning how to read and write from each other without a single rupee being paid. This was the first cohort of elected officials in Gram Panchayats, and one of the Panchayat members asked me, "Ma'am, this is very good what the government is doing, and this is important and it's helping people, but shouldn't we try something?" This was in 98. Shouldn't we try something like Cuba and Nicaragua, where they actually extended the school holidays, shut the schools, and school teachers and school children, high school children, went and taught. What was extraordinary was that this was in 98, when I probably wasn't using Google as much as I do now, or as normally is used. But here was a local elected representative in a Gram Panchayat in one of the districts of Karnataka, having global knowledge of best practices and suggesting, being generous enough to appreciate the effort that was being taken, but also suggesting a way forward. I think this constructive dialogue is also something that has actually been built. This environment of participatory, transparent, and constructive discussion, where the state is being pushed to be more and more responsive, is also a part of the magic mix that has allowed the states in southern India to be successful in what they have.
Thank you, everyone, for that elaboration. Mr. Asgupta, I want you to take this a little forward and explain to our young people how all of these that you talk of, all these leads not just to social outcomes that are so different, as Mr. Chandrasekhar pointed out, from the north, but also lead to economic resilience. How does this translate into economic resilience?
Thanks for that question. thank you for pointing out that economic development need not necessarily come before social development and need not necessarily lead to the social development outcomes that we want. It's possible for, and I mean, across the world, there are people talking about this. Growth alone is not sufficient. We need to look at per capita income. We need to look at regional imbalances. And the HDR that I spoke about in '98 actually was the one that first focused on Karnataka's own deep regional imbalances. And it's extraordinary that a government document in the '90s itself pointed out the vastness of these imbalances and the need to do something about them. How these interventions come together is something that I would take the example of what the minister was talking about, the guarantee schemes, the Shakti scheme, for example. The Shakti scheme, it's easy to dismiss a scheme like this as a freebie. What is a freebie? It's fare, free public transit, right? 500 crore trips have been made in 2 years by women and girls who have been able to get on these buses across Karnataka, nearly 25,000 buses, get on these buses in search of education, in search of livelihoods, including entrepreneurial livelihoods. For example, fish selling, right? You take a bus, you go from the coastal area, you go into interior area and you sell your fish. Or in search of part-time work, or because we recognize that there are deeper structural barriers, making buses free may not itself lead to greater women's workforce participation, but it may help them to retain good jobs. It may help them to seek better jobs. It may help them to seek better education. It may help them to seek flexible work, which can enable them to perform other caring responsibilities or manage all their other domestic responsibilities. We also found out that women trip chain. Women travel differently than men because men, when they go for work, are going from point A to point B in general, finishing that work and then coming back from point B to point A. Women often have to do multiple things like dropping a child to school, taking a family member to a health center, or going out to do some shopping, or going out to do 2 hours of work and then come back. So Shakti has been extraordinary in its ability to help women to reach better levels of empowerment, to access healthcare, for example. Accessing healthcare, healthy workforce, better workforce. You have lesser absenteeism, you have greater participation, you have more women being able to go out and do whatever work they choose, whether it's garment sector, whether it's working in MG Narega, whether it's working in MG Narega itself. During COVID, Karnataka generated 16 crore person days. And in the last 5 years, the participation of women in MG Narega in Karnataka has grown from less than 48% to something like 54 to 55%. In the same state, the participation has increased. So again, cash transfers, the Grihalakshmi cash transfers, Karnataka was the first state to do 2,000 rupees a month. Cash transfers, together with bus mobility, are enabling women to access other forms of work, other forms of entrepreneurship, access higher education. I have myself, over the last 2 years, interviewed young women who have come to Bangalore for these interviews. Some of them definitely would have had to borrow money or would have not even been able to attend those interviews, but because of Shakti, they have been able to come. And therefore, what these interventions together do is create a larger narrative of growth, of individual flourishing. When the individual flourishes, when the individual is able to earn more, care for their family more, spend on better nutrition for their children, use the savings that they were otherwise spending on buses to get more eggs, more milk, more fruit for their children, I think we're going to see the fruits of development down the years being very visible.
Thank you. Mr. Chandrasekhar, we were talking about, I think even Mr. Shivagnanam was talking about that fiscal transfers are penalizing success, and you mentioned that. So how, from a public finance perspective, how big and how real is this problem?
Public and how real?
Yes.
Well, actually, I mentioned that our contribution of the South to the GDP is as high as 30%. But what we are getting back in terms of allocation of central resources is just about half of that, about 16%.
And what's
So
the impact on the ground then?
on the ground, you know, it's difficult to say because I think my feeling is that the rupee has been better spent in the south than in the north. You see the same factors, the finance commissions successively have been using the same parameters. The distance between from the average per capita income, that has been one factor. Population has been another factor. These have been the same things from the earlier finance commissions to today. Some tweaking has taken place, but it's still there. But then, somehow, as Uma was saying, we do have a much better health mechanism, education mechanism, social standards in the south than in the north. Literacy is much higher in the south than in the north. Now, the handling of COVID, she mentioned, the Panchayati Raj system which has been established has proven itself in the south. It's worked. And there is a feeling that even, you know, many of us IAS officers had doubts initially whether the development of the Panchayati Raj system, decentralization, will essentially mean a shift in power. But then what our youngsters actually found out was that it strengthened them, because they were able to get the people also on board. So they are able to do much more through the Panchayati Raj system today than what we, when we were collectors, could do. I mean, when I was a collector at that time, there was hardly any money at my disposal. The contact systems with the people were much more loose. Today it's much stronger, and a great deal more work is being done. So I think we have been using money better, with the result that we have got better output and better results. But at the same time, I do believe that we can achieve a great deal more if there are certain variations in the pattern of spending, in the philosophy of governance at the central level, which applies across the board to all the southern states. Which is why I feel that now the time has come seriously to think in terms of the southern states getting together in some form or the other, talking of their, and we also have to learn from each other. Like we have to learn from Tamil Nadu, and Kerala has to learn from Tamil Nadu and Karnataka the methods of industrialization, how industry can improve better. Likewise, I'm sure the other southern states can learn a lot from Kerala on the services sector and on the health education system at the lower level. We have also, Kerala has to learn from Karnataka in particular, higher education, how it has developed in Karnataka. It's not happened in Kerala, with the result that we have to send our youngsters to Bangalore and so on to study or abroad. There are systems also, how do people go abroad? The migration systems, that we have to learn. And again, we have a huge problem of migrant labor from the north. Now it's a wonderful thing for us, because I think it leads to greater integration of the nation. But how we are going to absorb them, and how we are going to give them the same facilities as the people already resident there. I think that's another issue which we need to handle. So there are many problems cropping up. We have the problem of urbanization, which I mentioned. We are far more urban than the north. We have a number of such problems coming up where I think we could gain by constant interaction between our states, and it could also help in formulating some common policies. We generally do meet, that is, the states do meet just before the finance commissions, and we talk in terms of what we can do jointly. But that's not enough. You got to think in terms of continuously talking to each other, learning from each other, in which case I think all the states will benefit.
Please.
I just wanted to add two things. One is, thank you for mentioning migration. That is, I think, one of the things where the southern states have to really think about how we are going to provide services and provide basic services like health, education, and so on to migrant populations, because they contribute to the economy. That there's much more work to be done. And the second point, thank you for raising this, sir, regarding southern states needing to talk to each other, because there's much that we can learn from each other. And Ratin is also here. I think there's a space for an institution which actually should be anchored and based in the south, which studies what has actually, we do a lot of things in terms of studying what goes wrong. We need to start studying what has gone right and why has it gone right. Like the Muthulakshmi Reddy scheme, happened in Tamil Nadu. It didn't happen in Karnataka or Kerala, but how did they get that right? And how can other states do it in their situations? That could be one of the calls to action of this entire dialogue today.
Thank you. Mr. Sivagnanam, you were talking about the federal and the state, and you were talking about how the schemes worked and the social schemes in Tamil Nadu worked. But what kind of planning do we need now? Is it going to be industrial? Is it going to be social? Is it going to be ecological? What do you think is really needed there? You said you will talk about the gaps.
Yes, whatever is working right now for South is working very well, madam, and we can improve upon it. And there are minor differences, divergences, as pointed out, Chandra pointed out, madam pointed out, but they are minor. The convergence is substantial. See, for instance, you pointed about the women development. In Tamil Nadu, 10th pass out, plus 2 pass out, and the TNPC recruitment, more than 2/3 are girls, women. See, it is because social justice means not just to OBC, SC, ST, even gender. In all the weaker sections should be included. That is the theme of the social justice. So we have a number of issues. We can address it. There are a number of ways in which we can cooperate. Professor Ratin Rai has written recently in Indian Express. There are so many possibilities where we can cooperate and join together, work together. And how we are coming together, he has also written about it. Now, the challenges that we are facing on the fiscal front and the parliamentary constituency, we have discussed much. But what we have not discussed is the political challenge that we are facing today. Even Chandra has pointed out double engine growth. A couple of days back, Prime Minister visited Tamil Nadu and spoken about this double engine. The state chief minister responded saying that it is a Dabba engine. Those who know Tamil may know very well it is a rusted tin. So what he meant is, apart from the political counter, there is a substance. There is a fact in the defense. It won't work. The double engine will not work, and wherever it is working, we don't see the results. UP, it is working. What is the result? What we have able to achieve with the single engine, the double engine could not achieve that. And moreover, what he promises is anti-federal. See, the basic structure of our constitution is federal. Every rupee that we pay as a tax, in fact, we pay more, as many may have pointed out. Every rupee we pay should be spent efficiently, equitably. Here is a prime minister who is promising, if you elect me, I can spend more. That is squarely anti-federal. How can you promise that if you elected me, I can support more? So even wherever it has happened, that has not delivered result. The challenge is, as I said, social justice facilitated economic advancement, economic growth, and they encourage each other. So the precondition is social justice. Union government proceeded on the other way. They believed that economic development or distributive justice will deliver social justice. That has not happened. So in 2004, we brought Manrega. So the union government itself reconsidered their approach, development approach. So all along 70 years, the debate in Indian economy has been growth and distribution. Now what is happening? Reaching 5 trillion economy. At some point, our GDP will reach 5 trillion. Whether it is 2047 or 57 doesn't matter. At one point, it will be, so what? What it does for the people? So distribution is totally taken away from the debate. Reaching a trillion, 5 trillion become the target. Sheer GDP, size of the GDP, achieving a sheer number become the target. So distribution is taken away from the debate itself. Now this won't work. This won't work as we have demonstrated, South has demonstrated. Social justice should preside. Social development should preside for any economic development. That's what the convergence, the message that we will be able to convey. And another thing, your double engine on the political front, you think that your philosophy thinks that one religion is superior, one caste is superior. So by default, this philosophy itself is exclusive. It cannot be inclusive. Here we spoke about women, backward community, scheduled caste, scheduled tribe, all sections of vulnerabilities, even transgender. We have special schemes in the Tamil Nadu. So we have been looking for vulnerabilities, packets of vulnerability trying to address. Whereas your political philosophy itself is divisive and exclusionary. So how can that engine will work? So that may not work. Whereas we have single engine, but that delivers double-digit growth because it is based on a sound foundation, social development. And they encourage each other. So we don't need any engine, any further engine. If at all, if we need, we will legitimately fight for. Most of the southern states are engaged in court battle litigations against the governor, against act, union act. There are a number of series of acts the union government during the last 10 years have enacted, taking the rights of the state subjects. See, centrally, we have been discussing, debating centrally sponsored schemes. Most of these schemes are on the state subjects. Now recently, maybe 25 acts, Professor Ratin Rai may know very well, number of acts have been passed silently taking away the state rights. So that is the formidable challenge we are facing. So double engines, the political leaders, our leaders can face it. So whereas behind this double engine is an incentive. The political philosophy thinks that we can incentivize people to suffragize. In Tamil Nadu, you have maximum number of temples. Unlike the northern India, we have so many number of thousands of temples, and most of us are faithful believers. And parallelly, we also believe in Periyar. So we have both the extremes, but you cannot trust upon. You cannot trust anything on that count we are converging. As well as these values are concerned, we all have faith. We all have faith, But that should not come into politics. That is my personal. So here is a philosophy that brings this divisive, exclusionary development strategy into politics. So that may not work here. Thank you.
What I see really here is a great sense of confidence in ourselves. What I see is a great sense of confidence in ourselves. And I think you also mentioned when I talked about fiscal stress, Mr. Chandrasekhar mentioned that we spend the rupee better. Now, my fear here is this going to lead to a certain sense of complacency?
This confidence is coming from, for instance, Chandrasekhar pointed out the fiscal thing. We, out of every 100 rupees, 75 rupees is generated through our own tax revenue.
Yes.
See, from where it comes? It comes from our economy, from where our economy got developed. See, the first thing, the double engine, the union government thinks that public investment, they are promising public investment, which for which we deserve those investment legitimately. Metro, Coimbatore, Madurai deserve that. It's a mega city. If you want to achieve rapid economic growth for the country as a whole, the metro should be given to Madurai and Coimbatore. It is withheld politically. Okay. So, the investment he is talking about is a public investment. I'm answering your question, from where the confidence comes.
Yes, no, I understand.
See, the public investment is just 1/4. The public expenditure as a whole in the country is just 26-28%, Professor? Yes, 28%, of which the union spends some 13% or 12%, that is also declining for the last 10 years. And within that 1/10 of the expenditure, or 2-3% may be investment expenditure, that also boosted, railways included, state supports are included, still it is not increasing 3%. So, what you are incentivizing, trying to promise is very, very minuscule. Whereas the lion's share is outside the public sector. 3/4 of the economy is private. Now all the southern states are relying on the private investment. And our single engine is going faster because of the private investment, which comes from 3/4 of the economy. And that comes based on the inherent strength in the southern economy. You have highly skilled labor force, infrastructure, governance, you have invested in infrastructure. The state government invests in infrastructure. The union refused metro, the state government is going ahead with the spending. The school education program, they withheld because on condition, if you impose Hindi, we will give that for 4,000 crore. Nothing doing. The state chief minister announced we will spend that money. 4,000 the state is bearing. Our budget is 4.5 lakh crore. So 4,000 is nothing. We can bear it. So the confidence comes from our inherent strength in the economy, our workforce.
I agree. But my question really is this going to lead in the future to a certain sense of complacency, or are we looking at reinventing the growth model and seeing how we can take this
it is not
further?
Complacency. I am warning about the threat. Whatever Professor Chandrasekhar has pointed out, fiscal front, parliamentary constituency front, these threats are real. Similarly, the double engine threat, what I mean is a political philosophy. So this philosophy is trying to be imposed here. These are all the risks we are confronting. We have to face it. Maybe it is politically.
So how do we plan forward, Mr. Chandrasekhar?
How do I?
How do we look at reinventing the growth model that we already have? Because in the future, it is going to change.
I do believe that I don't think complacency is going to come, primarily because in spite of growing faster, we are still very poor. So long as that poverty is there, so long as democracy is there, people have to get voted to power. I think we are not going to take the problem of the people lightly. I mean, otherwise after 5 years we will be out. That's itself one of the great things that our constitution makers did, bringing this. But there are many changes that need to take place. For example, I'll just give you one example of something that is happening. You see, there is a feeling that all the states are uniform. which is not true. You see, there is, what is that called? Jal Nidhi scheme, isn't it? Prime Minister's Jal Nidhi, Jal Jeevan program. Jal Jeevan program. Now, it is supposed to bring water to all the villages. Now, the whole idea is that you dig a deep well, groundwater well, bring the water up, store it in a tank, then from the tank take it by pipes to all the villagers, to the houses, and take money from them. The panchayat takes some money from them. That is the scheme. But then in Kerala, we do not have villages like that. Kerala is one big urban sprawl. So how are you going to implement this centrally sponsored scheme? Likewise, there are many centrally sponsored schemes, complete rigidity in implementation, no changes allowed, with the result that many of them the states are not able to make use of. Kerala, for one, I know, has always been underspending the resources available under the centrally sponsored schemes, primarily because they are not tailored for Kerala. Now, if we get the amount that is to be given under the centrally sponsored schemes, and we are allowed to formulate our own schemes, probably we will do a better job. Which is the reason why, I mean, this is a problem not only of Kerala, it is a problem of all the states. Which is the problem, which is the reason why, particularly since the old systems of talking, there used to be the National Development Council, every year it used to meet, the chief ministers used to come, present their views. There was the interstate council, there used to be many ways of doing that. That is lacking today. So we have to bring it back into existence. And that's why I feel that all of us, and Uma, I'm so happy she feels it is a good idea. I feel that the southern states have to sit together, exchange ideas, exchange problems, talk in a joint manner, in which case we'll probably get a far better deal than what we are getting today. And we will be able to by talking to each other, we are also going to grow our own states. What scheme, the Kudumbashri scheme, for example, in Kerala. Now it was somebody's of IAS officers, brainwave. He said there are so many women unemployed in the villages, why not we make them into productive units? So they were constituted into small groups and they started contributing to the economy. They started producing products. Now it's it's even there on your internet you will find. They're selling their products. And they're doing a lot of other things for the people. So that really, it's a big change. It is something like what was done in Bangladesh initially. That was transplanted to Kerala. And it's working. So like that, there are ideas which we can share with each other. And we can talk to each other, get those ideas. We can talk to the center, we can even talk to other states. And really, I think by this kind of exchange of ideas, we can develop the whole, we are already have a base. From this base, we can go many times forward. And I think we are best positioned, the South is best positioned to achieve significant change. Now let the $5 trillion be achieved, as he said. That will happen. It's bound to happen. It will grow. I mean, I remember we were very excited. That was in 2006 or 7 when we touched $1 trillion. Since then, we have now grown, you know. It will grow. Your total growth will take place. But at the same time, what they call the Gini coefficient, the extent of inequality in society, that has substantially increased. And how we are going to, I mean, the top 1%, how much percent do they have? 40%. 40% of the GDP they have. And the bottom 50% have 3% of GDP. Now, is that the kind of growth that we want? I think these are ideas where we cannot just stay back and allow things to happen. Saying we will reach 4 trillion, 5 trillion, that won't, it will happen. 4 trillion will be achieved. But how we are going to achieve, who is going to achieve it, how the people are going to benefit, how will we take care of the poorest? I mean, this was Gandhiji's philosophy, no? Look at the poorest man in society and let him guide you on each policy that you make. Will it help him? That should be the focus. So if we are able to go that way, think a little differently, devise new schemes. As again Uma said, there is a lot of good civil society in the south. Let them get together. We have problems. Like in Kerala, I don't know whether in other states, we have a huge problem of drug abuse among students. We need to handle that problem. Civil society is trying. Government is not really able to make an impact. How we can do these things together and think it together, that's important. And that kind of organization does not exist at present.
Thank you, Mr. Dasgupta. Some last words.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, just wanted to make 3 very, very quick points. One was on a slight note of being a devil's advocate, in continuation of what you said, Mr. Chandrasekhar. You know, this centrally sponsored schemes, as a young officer implementing and now as development commissioner, I've always, like you, I found it frustrating sometimes when they have this one-size-fits-all approach. Having said that, and we feel that the amount of money can be better spent if states are allowed to do their own thing. Having said that, I do feel, and I'm not a fan of paternalism at all. In fact, I'm a fierce opponent of paternalism. However, I do feel that broadly, in certain states, this approach of ensuring that this basic minimum gets done is something that will yield some returns, and it has its value. And I also feel, in continuation, that let the one-size-fits-all scheme come, but let us do the plus-plus. That plus-plus with the struggle that we do in southern states is worth much more to me, because that plus-plus comes from a space where we are responding to local needs. It's not just that we are accepting and saying that this is where the scheme ends, this is the scheme, this is how it is. We are putting in our own resources, our own effort and so on as a further response to local needs, and that has a very important value beyond just the value of that scheme to the extent that it covers. That is the first thing I wanted to say. The second 2 points I wanted to make very quickly. It's not that southern states haven't had deep trenchant problems, just and social practices like the Devdasi practice, for example, in Karnataka and many other states in southern India. The Devdasi rehabilitation scheme in Karnataka is one of the most successful because it has been a partnership between the state and with many, many civil society organizations, and not only civil society organizations as such, but also the public. A response that has come. There have been 2 surveys, one as far back as the 90s, one in 2007, identifying 46,660 former Devadasis who have been given a comprehensive rehabilitation, and a further survey has happened this year to understand their socioeconomic conditions and see what else can be done in order to improve the lives and the quality of life of them and their families. This, again, is just one example of what the state, but also other actors, the civil society, public participation. And this is where I extend civil society to mean public participation, whether it's in Gram Sabhas or whether it's in ringing up the panchayat to find out why you haven't opened your door yet because it's 11 o'clock and we want to get some work done. I value that deliberative space where panchayat members are held to account, not just panchayat members, but consultations whenever we bring new policies. the third thing that I wanted to say was that this very participation and of holding the government to account leads to better things. And that's why, if we can share, coming back to your suggestion, that we must have these dialogues, but not have it only as dialogues, but have them as a structured conversation, and as perhaps an institution, a public institution, that will actually start studying what we're able to do right, how we're able to quick and dirty analysis of what is going right, how can it be improved, how can states learn from each other, how can we take it forward, and how can we share all of this, not only with the public of our own states, but with other states in India, because we're all at different stages of our development journey on the same road.
Thank you. Thanks. We'll take a few questions now, I think 2 or 3 questions, and then we'll close.
Hello, I am Shinjini. I am a student of Media and Communication Studies here at Christ. First of all, thank you for such an enlightening panel. I really enjoyed it. My question is that the panel spoke of the friction between different blocks in the nation, and also about the need of collaboration and dialogue that is imminent. So how can we, the concerned leaders, the representatives, and us as a nation, strike a balance between the friction for the benefit of federal governance and unity for the sake of progress? The second part of the question is that what should be the approach, and how, does the civic society, specifically the youth and students, play a role in this equation?
What is the first question? I didn't hear.
The first question is how can we strike a balance between friction for the benefit of federal governance and
Friction
unity
with the central government.
Friction for the sake of federal governance and unity for the sake of progress.
Friction between the southern states, you mean?
Friction between the different blocks of the nation, and like regarding placement and like policy making and all of those things, and unity for the sake of progress.
I think friction arises primarily because of all these factors that were mentioned here, which I don't want to elaborate because I'll get too political. Mr. Shivanand,
I will respond to the first question alone. See, there is no such a friction. Are there any states between, they are fighting with each other? No friction between the states. And the identity, our identity is a diversity. You should celebrate diversity. That is our identity. If you make an attempt to submerge those diversity and make everything uniform, unity, in the name of unity, that is where friction comes.
and the second part, what can young people do?
So how does civic society?
Yeah,
and, like,
I
does
see
it-
there are many organizations of the south, of young people, which already exist. I am myself chairman of the advisory committee of a big group called the India International Movement to Unite Nations. It has about 30,000 students across 108. There is in Bangalore also. Now, I think what you require really is you need to think together and think like a nation. How are we going to achieve? We are not in competition with each other. We want all the states to grow. We want all the people to grow. What better can we do? We are not, I think the most dangerous thing that can happen is that we get caught in a political trap. And I entirely depend on the young people present here, the young people not present here, to take us out of the trap, because this nation's growth, this nation's development depends entirely on working together. I mean, after all, we are proud of what we have done, but at the same time we know that Vietnam, which faced a very difficult war, is now far above us in terms of technology. Korea, which again, around the same time they have grown so much. China and India, where at the same, in the 80s, we spent the same 0.6% on research and development. Today, they are challenging US, and this year they are expected to cross US in research and development, which is the basis of development. Actually, without more science, more technology, we are not going to grow. And that is somewhere we have totally failed, abysmally failed. Which is why I feel, the South has a better sense of research, of development, etc. And you people have, young people have. I think you can really lead from the front. And that's what I expect of you, Ma.
Yeah, to the young people, I would say that I myself, as a parent of 2 young people, I'm worried about the world that they're facing. There are challenges that our generation didn't have to face, such as climate change. There are also enduring challenges, such as inequality. And your generation has to face these challenges and find ways to resolve them, which means, first of all, participation, but participation with information. You have to be informed, you have to read, you have to know how government functions. You can only hold your governments accountable if you know how government functions. And that means local government, state, center, everything. You need to participate either by leading or by holding your leaders accountable, which means read up, find out, get your voter card, go and vote, find out who are the options, make an informed choice. These are all ways in which young people can prepare for a better future and a better world for all of us.
Thank you. We'll take one last question.
Hello, ma'am. Hello, sir. Thank you for the conversation here. My name is Shivangi Biswas. I'm also from Christ University. My question was, the budget is going to be announced on February 1st. What kind of discussions and deliberations do you wish to see from the Parliament and from the budget allocation and allocation of resources that can help us form the kind of collaborative experience that we are hoping to achieve here?
Shivagnanam said, probably we require an entire whole day for discussing that. But I was just talking to Mr. Ratin Roy, who's one of the foremost economists in the country today. He's sitting there quietly. But what he said was, I don't know whether it's going to happen or not, that along with the budget, the 16th Finance Commission recommendations could also come. If it does come, that will give us an indication as to where we stand. As it is, as I mentioned earlier, the focus of growth, the direction of growth has been just in one direction. That is the more towards the poorer states, less towards those who have progressed. Now, whether that will change and there will be a kind of dividend for efficiency in spending, that is to be seen. The 16th Finance Commission recommendation will come. But budgets, of course, every year there will be a budget. Certain changes will take place. I hope, and I don't know whether Mr. Ratin Roy will agree with me on this, but I feel that the focus for too long during the last 10 years has been supply side economics. Basically give more and more to the corporates and they will give to the people. Recently, last budget we saw change. We found that income tax rates were reduced. And the whole idea was that consumption will get a boost. You see, unless you have a balance between supply and demand, your growth is not going to take place. So that is what I hope the budget will present in the current year. I don't know whether that will happen.
Thank you. On that hopeful note, we shall now call it a day. Thank you so much for such an engaging conversation and enlightening. I think a lot of the young people have learned a lot of things today, a bit of history as well. Thank you so much for this.